Hi, I'm Janet Gross. Welcome to Coping Today, a place where we talk about mental health and well-being. And today, technology. Actually, addiction to technology. Of course, in our daily life, we need technology, but some people seem to need it more and more. And you can probably visualize someone now thinking, yeah, them. Or you can see that person in the mirror or the reflection of your device. Okay? Dr. Royce Delgado, professor of counseling at the University of Holy Cross, joins us, as always, to talk things out. And too often, I guess this is the reality that's difficult to avoid. Right. You know, in these days,
right.
Everybody has, well, I reach for my phone, it's not on the desk. But you know what I'm saying?
It's that habit, right?
I know, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. We create habits, and it's habitual. When something is habitual, it becomes a part of our daily activity, just of reaching over, thinking that it's right there, because it tends to be.
Right.
And so it's important to realize that they're not going anywhere. Our cell phones, our tablets, our laptops, our computers, all of our devices are here. It's part of 21st century life. And they're tools, and they're necessary.
Yes, you have to use them. It's like food. Well, not like food, but you do have to have it.
Yeah, and we need it for work. We need it for school. We need it for leisure, for recreation, for entertainment, for all of those things. And what's confusing about this is that it's the same devices that offer us opportunities to learn, that offer us opportunities to work and generate revenue for our families. It offers us opportunities to connect with one another. All of these things are pro-socially acceptable and good, and we want to welcome that. And it's made life convenient. These same devices, we also, when we turn it off for work or for school, we turn to these same devices for leisure, recreation, and entertainment. Now, we're on them perhaps more than we need to be. Our leisure, our recreation, our entertainment online is much longer than it is beneficial to us. And figuring out what's too much, how do you know if you are engaging in it too much, and what to do if that's in fact your situation.
Because it is a time suck. I mean, you get on something, I'm just going to look this up. And the next thing you know, if you don't have anything else to do or nothing interrupts you, you have been on there for so long. You're like, what? Where did my time go?
And it's structured so easily. You know, you're swiping, just the notion of swiping, cool. And just going video after video or chat after chat, whatever it may be. And you look up and you could easily have been there for 3 hours.
I know.
And that is considered excess. Mental health professionals, and this is where people are going to be, well, what do you mean you have to limit it? Mental health professionals say that you have to limit it to 2 hours a day when using it for recreational, leisure, or entertainment purposes. That's any type of device, whether it's video games, computers, laptops, cell phones. If you're using it for those purposes, which no one's saying not to use it for those purposes, but when you do, limit it to the length of a movie or for 2 hours. Beyond that, it's perhaps going into the realm of excess use and towards addiction.
Do you think that like 90% of Americans are on that end of it? I do too.
Yes, certainly.
You know, it's just crazy.
Yes, 90% of Americans and the world they're all on these devices hours and hours and hours on end. I'm guilty myself. If I were to
raise my hand,
go looking on the history of in a 24-hour period of time, how much time I spend on my phone and try to extrapolate, or my computer, if I try to extrapolate the non-work related activities, guilty as charged. I'm on it more than 2 hours some days. But we need to be very intentional and mindful to reduce that for our own sake, because our young people, and even our not so young people, are now finding themselves impacted in their offline activity. Offline activity has changed dramatically because of the increase of online activity.
What are you talking about, like the non-ability to go do things, or to
go and have a cup of coffee with a friend, or to go have lunch, or to go to a party, or to engage in any type of offline activity? A lot of the people that I work with right now, part of the assignments, when I find that they are using technology to excess, one of the assignments is to encourage them to put their devices down and go engage with those same people that they're engaging with online in an offline scenario. And it's a challenge. You'd be surprised how many sessions it takes some individuals, in particular younger people, to go and engage offline because they don't have that mask, that additional barrier, which is the screen that protects them from the other. There's this this fear and anxiety when engaging with others offline that we're finding in younger people. And the screen has served as a protective mechanism when engaging with others.
You can be more anonymous. You can be more, like not on guard.
Right, right. And with that, everything seems more exciting online. People are more anonymous and unguarded, so they are more prone to and successful at exaggerating or embellishing their experiences. Everything looks great online. Everybody's always on vacation. Everybody's always having a good time. There's always this party. So there's now this fear of missing out. The individual that doesn't have those activities, like, oh, I don't go to these parties, and I don't participate in these activities, and I don't take these vacations. My life is boring by comparison. What will I contribute if I communicate with someone offline? So let me stay in this safe environment and just consume all this information online, reduce my anxiety. And then when you don't have that device, you get anxious.
Yeah.
And there's a strong correlation now between anxiety and not using devices, or when you're challenged to not use a device, people's anxiety goes up. I know for one, if I leave my cell phone at home and I drive and I go off to work, like, oh my goodness, I forgot my cell phone. And then deciding, should I turn around to go get it? And even for a short little quick trip, if you're gonna go to the grocery store just to pick up, some milk, those 10 minutes that it would take to do that, you feel anxious without your phone, and it's on your mind the whole time. That's an indicator that we are perhaps a little too connected to our devices than is in our own best interest.
Plus, my grocery list is on the phone, so if I go to the store, I have to turn around. So many things do connect us with that.
Yes.
And when you said, you find people having trouble distancing, go meeting with those people, it could be the other person's fault too. They're like, no, I'm not going. I'm home. Yeah.
Yes, both parties. Both
so now
parties.
You got to arrange something. Oh,
Yeah, I have to get ready. I have to get dressed, and all that effort.
Yeah, and I can sit here in my little sweats and stuff and not have to go outside.
It takes a lot less effort to engage through a screen than it does offline and in person.
Do you think we got comfortable too staying home during COVID and stuff that just
that played a factor.
Accelerated that?
Yeah, that accelerated it. It's interesting because the younger generation that we refer to as digital natives, they have grown up not going off and doing things, and so they got comfortable. Those of us who were not used to being online as much, we joined them in that during the pandemic. Like, I can stay home and do these things and still engage and still participate, be it through leisure or work, in a way that doesn't require me to put in this additional effort.
I know. It became kind of, sometimes it was nice.
Yeah.
And it still is. Oh, we can do this. I don't have to drive to the North Shore. I don't have to go across a lake or, the river. Right. Things like that. You're like, well, this would be so much more time effective, which is also an excuse. Yeah. But, okay. All right. Well, before we take a break, let's talk about the service at the University of Holy Cross.
Yes, the Maronites of Holy Cross and University of Holy Cross for several years now have been offering services free of charge, free mental health services and counseling services to any resident in Louisiana. So anyone in Louisiana who is struggling with any type of situation, including addiction to technology or anything else, anxiety, depression, or trauma, can just notify the counseling center. Just call the number that's on the screen. The administrative assistant will take that call, triage it to the clinical director, who will then sign a counselor in training to you, and you begin receiving services free of charge via telemental health.
See, and there's a great use of technology.
Yes.
That really has
something that benefits you in your well-being and your growth as an individual.
So I don't think this should count against your screen time.
No, no, that's
not. We got it. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about powering down and looking up. Stay with us.
What if you could feel in control of your retirement in just a few clicks? At aceyourretirement.org, you can. Start with a free 3-minute chat with Avo, your friendly digital retirement coach. Just answer some simple questions like, how do you feel about your ability to save for retirement? Or in how many years do you want to retire? To get free action items customized just for you, get your retirement back on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Welcome back. We're talking about the misuse and abuse of technology. We're now joined by Mark Clayton, doctoral student in counseling at the University of Holy Cross. And you have spent the better part of a year exploring this very question, researching and everything. So first, why did you pick this and what did you learn?
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm delighted to be here today. And I really picked this topic because as a school counselor working with high school students, I have noticed an increase of students on their cell phones all day, every day during school, not paying attention in class, on TikTok in the hallways, making videos. And it just really baffled me that you're so in tune to this phone that you don't even care about your academics. And that's really what really started this whole journey for me in terms of studying, okay, is there some correlations here of why you're so in tune to the phone and not even worried about graduating high school?
Yeah. And I guess they used to take their phone away from you. They don't do that anymore?
So at my school, they only take the phones from freshmen, but 10th through 12th grade can have their phone. And even with the freshmen, it's this sense of, I can't be without my phone. And it's like, well, who are you talking to when everybody you talk to is at school?
That's a very good point. What's their response?
So that really just kind of made me think maybe we should dive a little deeper into this.
Because you got to figure they're not calling mom and dad.
Yeah, I would think not.
When I'm in school. Yeah, so yeah, it just seems to me that I think as a society, and what do you think, Mark? I mean, is it we are enabling it by not taking the phones away and saying don't use your phone in school, but everybody's on it and doing videos and but you know, I don't know, we allow it?
It's not that we, let's say, educators allow it. I think that, you know, as a parent, they push back on the idea of taking the phone away. But what if there's an emergency and things of that nature? And they're thinking of all the excuses of why their child should have the phone, but not thinking about how the phone is actually really impacting what it is that they are there to do. Are you really concerned about if an emergency was to happen? The school has phones. You can call the office. We can get the message to whatever it is. If you really need to talk to your child, you can send an email to one of the counselors or call the office and ask them to bring your child down to the office. And there are ways to connect your student to you. We're not keeping them away from you, but the cell phone itself, it just causes distractions. It has caused an increase in fights over social media. It's just causing a really big distraction in the educational environment.
Mm-hmm. And all that shows up on videos too, you know, that come from schools, and the bullying, and so much of this is involves social media and the access to a device for growing
Correct.
young people.
You know, and it's
Correct.
a very interesting point that, you know, there had been a point in history where schools had policies in place where you could not have a phone on campus. And it has been the pushback of parents saying, what if there's an emergency?
Right, yeah.
And so there is a valid point.
Yeah.
And so with that, there is this adverse unintended consequence with students using it for non-academic purposes. And it's something that we need to kind of help the students figure out that, yes, it's a tool that you need for emergencies, perhaps, that's helpful. And that may be a need, but could be helpful in emergency. But then we need to be responsible for it. And then young adults, adolescents who don't have that executive functioning, choose not to.
Well, you know, adults can't handle this.
Right.
We're expecting young people, growing young people, to do it. So do you think that this, I don't know, do you think that it affects their maturity as well, just not their grades, but their growing maturity? To not be able to connect, you know, like that.
So that's a very, very, very valid and good point that you make when it comes down to the maturity, because when we do see the issues that are happening over social media, they're very immature issues. It is not things that as an adult you would want to do. You don't think about the repercussions. You don't think about, if I'm trying to go get this part-time job, are they going to be looking at my social media to see what kind of person I am? Because I can say one thing on paper, but now in this world today, jobs are checking your social media to gain a little more about you. And if you're posting things that is not that goes into the complete opposite of what their morals and values are as a company, you don't think about that. So I do think that you raise a good point when it comes down to the maturity that young people today are just not as mature when it comes down to the social media posts and not understanding that everything does not need to be posted.
You know, and to that point, adolescents are very much present time oriented. They don't think into their future. They don't identify themselves as that 25 or 35-year-old professional who now is going to be held to account for things that they posted when they were 15 or 16.
Yeah.
They don't think that way because their brain is not fully developed. And so helping them to understand that these behaviors today could potentially impact you adversely in the future.
And that's a hard thing to tell somebody who's,
15. They don't listen to you about anything.
Yeah. You say that's going to happen in the future. You're like, well, then that's not going to happen to me. I'll deal with that later. So I guess it does affect their maturity because, one of the things we do as we grow is we realize that it's not all about us. You'd hope to anyway. So I guess this kind of encourages the whole screen addiction, the tech addiction, encourages self-absorption, just self-adoration, Not good for us. What do you think, Mark?
Agreed. Even with myself, I don't know at what point it was in life when I really thought about the whole social media thing and everything that needed to be posted. But at some point in life, and I don't know if it was early 20s or whenever, just had this thought that I don't want everything about my life posted, because what if one day I want to be the president of the United States or be the mayor of a city or just be in any position that requires you to take an extensive look in my background, that you see something from when I was younger now biting me 15 years later. For me, I was fortunate enough to kind of have that thought into the future earlier on in life rather than right now, and then trying to clean up what happened 15 years ago.
And then it'd be hard to clean up a lifetime of posts. That's a pretty tall task.
Yeah, many of them appear later and you're like, what?
Right.
I thought that was gone. Or somebody else captured it,
Yes.
Because as I learned, whatever you put on the internet, it never really goes away, even if you delete it.
Yeah, right. That's a horrifying thing, really,
Yes.
when you think about that. So what do you think about limits? Dr. Roy and I were talking about, limiting your screen time, certainly your after work screen time, to just a couple hours. Is it
Agreed.
smart for us?
Yes, in my research, I was finding when it came down to the social media addiction that the research was saying, people tend to take their phones with them to bed when they're getting ready for bed. And when they first wake up, the first thing that they may do is check the phone, check the social media feed, and things of that nature, which helps to add into that levels of anxiety, our worry, our fear of missing out on something, all of that. I agree, you should limit and be more intentional about your time and intentional about your screen time specifically. So whether you want to give yourself 1 or 2 hours of screen time, plan it and be strategic. Am I going to take my screen time during my lunch break? Am I going to take my screen time when I come home from work and I just need to unwind for a little bit before I make dinner or do whatever, but not doing it before you go to bed and not doing it when you first wake up? Those are 2 key points in life that I believe we should kind of scale back from.
And to that point, with regard to those habits of the screen time in the morning when you wake up, to have that be the first thing you do before you brush your teeth or do anything, that's an indicator that it's a significant part of your life, and that for it to be the last thing that you do before you go to bed, another indicator that it's a significant part of your life. And so to be very intentional to do away with certain aspects of that. Earlier we motioned about the phone being right here because we're used to the phone being right here from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed.
Mm-hmm. Plus, I think as a people now, we're talking to the tops of a lot of people's head, because we think we can multitask, and you really can't. You can't do those kinds of things. You can't split your concentration.
You can't, and that's why the 16-digit credit card number is broken up into fours. Four, because we can only hold certain bits of information at a time. You can't string 16 numbers and know it off the bat, but you can do 4 groups of 4. The brain can do that. So that's an example of multitasking. We can't do 16 things at one time. We can limit it down to a thing or 2. And when you're on your device, you can't be doing that and countless other things.
Yeah. And for kids, especially like Mark, when they're talking to somebody and you're talking to them, somebody else is in the room with you, you don't know who that is, and they're paying more attention to this, so you're getting a lot of, this view as a parent. That's, I don't know, I don't know what, it's hard to say what the solution is, unless you've come up with one, Mark.
As of today, I have not. However, my research is helping me to figure out how to develop a framework for school counselors to be able to work with students who may be experiencing the fear of missing out anxiety or social media addiction, and really kind of honing in on that, because I know it is a worldwide issue and there's really no particular framework in how to deal with all of them. There's a framework for how to work with a student with anxiety or maybe social media addiction, but not if they're experiencing any of these variables together.
Okay. Well, I look forward to that, because that sounds like you're on a great track. And if we can teach young people, then they can teach the coming generations, because maybe we haven't done as good of a job.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to see what Dr. Mark Clayton comes up with in the future.
Yep. Dr. Mark coming up this May, right?
That's right.
Well, congratulations ahead of time. And,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark, for joining us and talking about all this with us. And we'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.
Damage from hurricanes is devastating and traumatic. After these storms, dishonest contractors show up, hoping to make a quick buck from your insurance claim. They'll promise anything if they can get you to sign a contract, collect your payment in advance, and ultimately do no work at all. Avoid being the victim of contractor fraud. Get estimates from at least 3 contractors. Check references, and remember, if you didn't request it, reject it.
To report fraud, call us at 1-800-TEL-NICB. This is a public service message from the National Insurance Crime Bureau.
We're back talking about addiction to technology, screens, internet, those kind of things. So what are the symptoms of some of this? We've been talking about a lot of the things that happen in relationships and growth, and for young people, and for people who reach for their phones all the time,
Right.
So what are the symptoms?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I want to separate symptoms out in terms of the mental health symptoms, but then also physiological symptoms.
Oh.
We have physiological symptoms as a result of technology use. And so you might find that because you're looking down, that you have neck and shoulder pains and upper back pains, a certain tension because you're in this position much of the time. Carpal tunnel, where you're swiping or typing, that repetitive motion over and over again is impacting the tendons, the ligaments, the bones and the muscles in your hand and wrists. And so that is something to be mindful of. And vision changes. So you might have dry eye or blurred vision, or your vision has changed because of constant screen time. And so these are things that we need to be mindful of, because our physical health is being impacted by it. The mental health aspect of it is our anxiety has gone up. When we are not around our devices for social or leisure purposes, our anxiety goes up. Also, I would say conversely with regard to academic and work situations, because now academic and work communication is not limited to the standard work day. It's now bled into a 24-hour cycle. When you get an email, feeling you have to respond to it immediately, and you might get an email from someone at work at a certain time at 9 o'clock at night, feeling you have to respond because you're not working. And so it's important to put parameters on all of our technology use, not only for the leisure and recreation and entertainment purposes, but also centered around academic and work purposes, because it all bleeds, and then we're on these devices all of the time.
And don't you think, though, these days it's hard to make that statement to your boss, and I'm not answering you after 5?
Right. It is challenging. It is challenging. I for one, maybe I'm in a position where I can assert certain things these days.
Oh, with your students, yeah.
With the students, and maybe even with others. Maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't have felt comfortable asserting a certain position with regard to these things. But I, for one, am in a position where I feel comfortable in doing so now. And I encourage others to perhaps figure that out for themselves, to do that for their own well-being, as well as others learning to respect your time and you as a person. So I, for one, say I will not respond to things after 5 p.m. on a Friday, and I'll begin to respond at 8 a.m. on a Monday. And then conversely, during the week, maybe I will not respond to something prior to 8 o'clock in the morning, and I will not respond to something after 9 p.m. You put your own parameters. You let people know what it is that what's going on and what you're going to respond to with regard to work, if you will, and academic purposes. With regard to leisure, again, going back to that 2-hour limit of you imposing upon yourself, I'm only going to engage in social media or gaming or what have you for this definitive 2-hour period of time, because anything beyond that is an excess. And if there's still time in your day, you're like, okay, well, now what am I going to do? Well, there's all sorts of offline activities that one can do, and perhaps even engage with the people that are in your proximity.
Yeah, right. You know, I think that's interesting because you brought up limiting yourself and limiting others. And it's all about your screen time.
Right.
You are putting limits, which, as you said, is difficult to do sometimes. But if you start out with that, then everybody knows, oh man, if I email her this, she may not get back to it, you know.
And that's something that I have come to see, that
Yeah.
I check my email on the weekend just to see, and I have gotten to a point where I don't get things sent to me between 5 p.m. on a Friday and 8 a.m. on a Monday. But that Monday, a few things come through.
Yeah. Okay, so it's stand up for yourself and stand up for yourself with your own device. you know.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay, so do you have any tips for us before we go?
Yes, it's important that if you can figure out this technology, to turn off push notifications. We're constantly getting notified of different things, whether it be news breaks or what have you, to turn that off. Schedule times to check your phone, or at least be mindful about it. Use a timer to block your usage. So, use that 2-hour timer. Replace smartphone use with something you value. What are you interested in? Start to engage in those offline activities and things of interest to you. Don't take your phone to bed. It's important that it not be the last thing you do, nor the first thing you do each day. And set expectations around email response times, just as I mentioned, that when you set that expectation, people will start to respect it and respond to it. I think you'll be surprised that employers are not going to be so aggressive and insistent as you think.
Right, and if they are, then maybe there's some extra compensation that they need to think about.
A conversation to have.
Yeah, and you know what is interesting? Just this one thing, because you said, do you think I like to read, but now all my reading is screen.
Yes.
And so, that's a difference there. That it just kind of, it's pervasive and invasive.
My reading preference is the old school
Still a book. Okay, well, there you go. All right, anything happening in the University of Holy Cross?
Yes, the University of Holy Cross is still that wonderful place, and we have over 65 programs of study. So if you're interested in anything at the bachelor's, master's, or doctoral level, you can just scan the QR code on your screen and see what we have to offer and enroll in one of our many courses in the summer or fall.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Roy Salgado, for talking things through. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Mark Clayton, and all of your colleagues at the University of Holy Cross for helping us. We thank you for watching and being a part of Coping Today.